In order, please. Ms. Kirby, we have a roll call, please.
Mr. Hurt?
Here.
Ms. Stone?
Here.
Dino P. Pascalakis?
Here.
Mr. Mayara?
Here.
Ms. Ramsey? Here. Mr. Lee?
Here.
Ms. Register?
Here.
Dino M. Pascalakis?
Here.
Mr. Phillips?
Here.
Okay, so the next item on the agenda is the appointment of a chair and a vice chair. Do we have nominations?
I'd like to make a nomination for chair.
Okay.
Dustin Leak.
I'd like to second it.
Let's collect all the nominations first, and then we'll do a roll call vote. Are there any other nominations? Okay, roll call vote. Is it even needed? We only have one nomination. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. So the next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes.
How about vice chair?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just worried about me. Do we have any nominations for vice chair?
I nominate Dino 1.
That's Dino P.
That's
Yes.
me. Yeah, I accept.
Any other nominations? All right, we don't even have to move seats.
Well, all of
All
those.
in favor?
Aye.
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 All right. So now the next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes.
My motion.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Comments? All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Next item on the agenda is DEV 2013-109, site plan for 15 Boardwalk.
Was there a conflict of interest? I'm an investor with the applicants, or I'll be participating in this matter.
I think we have a couple more.
Yeah, I also have a conflict of interest, if you read today's paper.
I also have a conflict of interest. Okay, and we have those forms that everyone got here for the conflict of interest, all signed, and so that's all taken care of. And I'd want to just mention that they're related to this item. We've received some additional information that was placed up here on your dais. This is the only one, right? Here. Okay. There's 3 items that are clipped together. And you should have a stormwater system maintenance agreement, a special warranty deed, and also a survey from Slager and Associates attached therein. And these were all provided by the applicant, is that correct? Okay. So that has been provided to you. I want to begin by saying that and I know some of you are new here this evening with us, and as we move forward, the site plan approval process is one where we make the final decision on a site plan in this particular case as a redevelopment board. I just want to explain a couple nuances to that. One is that if there is, if all the information is not available, and we are not in a position to bring it to the board and have it acted on, and this is staff, we wouldn't be here. Well, some new information has come up, and it was put in your packet. And that in part was staff's concern, is that we have new information that was provided just as the report was about ready to go out. And I'm speaking specifically about a letter from Jim Morris that is in your packet, and hopefully you've had a chance to read that. And number 2 is just to point out that in making a decision, you have to have all the information that we normally go through this technical staff review, and there are certain items that we review that are not of any concern because they're just getting certain utility permits, other things that are just customary to what we call a final site plan. So after you approve site plans, we have something called a final site plan process just to get the paperwork all taken care of and through the system. And in our case, we thought we were there. We thought this was moving forward, but that is not the case tonight. And so I would like to, if it's okay with you, call up upon our engineer so he can explain to you what need to have a continuance of this meeting. So, Mr. Sloan, if it's okay?
Absolutely.
With the chair? Okay, thank you.
Good evening, Jim Sloan, Public Works, Deputy Public Works Director and City Engineer. Excuse me. When the initial TRT, Technical Review Committee, or Technical Review Team, reviewed this project, they did not specifically review the stormwater disposal system. And consequently, we'd like to take it back to review for that purpose, and therefore are requesting a continuance of the item until the next meeting.
So that means that the city no longer recommends approval at this time?
I wrote the staff report, and that's correct until we have further review with regards to specifically the boardwalk, the right-of-way, the drainage, stormwater that you referred to. Mr.
So
Sloan.
staff is asking for a continuance, but there may be some people here who might want to make some comments to the board. So you might want to hear from them first before you guys act.
Okay, so this is a request from staff, not a request from the applicant.
It's a request from staff.
Okay, so the applicant's going to go forward with their presentation, and then whoever has...
No, this staff is asking for a continuance. The applicant is here. If the applicant wishes to make a statement to the board, they are free to do so, or if there's anybody in the public who possibly wouldn't be able to come back to make their comments, it would be preferable to keep all substantive discussion of the application in one meeting if possible, but the applicant may want to talk about the request for a continuance.
The only reason I brought this up is because I also have people from out of town, from Vero Beach, that actually drove specifically for this meeting, and I would like for them to be heard.
And they have the opportunity to do so.
Okay, thank you. So would the applicant like to make comments, please?
Good evening. Parker Minchenberg, 1729 Ridgewood Avenue. I'm the engineer representing the project. Kind of in the 12th hour, we received the letter that Mr. Morris had written, and that caused us to provide the additional information to Mr. Berger on the easements and the ownership deed. We're okay with continuing for a month. Mr. Sloan had indicated they hadn't reviewed the stormwater. I believe that they did review it, but they have additional review that they want to do. So we're going to go along with continuing for a month to give them the opportunity to do that. But I've been asked by the applicant to get a commitment from Mr. Sloan that he and his staff can spend some time with me this week so we can address his concerns, perhaps revise the plans to address his concerns. So at the next meeting, a month from now, we'll have been able to resubmit a plan and have a review. So we're okay with the one meeting continuance. In return, we'd like to get a commitment from engineering to get with us quickly to resolve these issues.
Mr. Sloan, does that work for you and your team?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other comments?
Oh, I'm sorry. If you're going, Gus?
One comment. I'm Gus Gornter. I'm the attorney for the applicant. I wanted to make clear that it's our understanding that there's only one issue that we're dealing with tonight, and that is the issue of the stormwater retention under the boardwalk. There's no other issues that staff has at this time that they are objecting to, or that it's our understanding that we've complied with all the requirements in the report, and there's just this one issue that remains to be resolved.
I actually will speak to that point before the board makes a decision.
Certainly. Reed, is that your understanding of staff? That
No, and I'll reserve my comments till I hear from the other people that want to say something, if that's okay.
Are there any other comments?
Chairman, board members, good evening. I'm Jim Morris, and I represent the Pastelakis family as well as AL&P. And the attempt to narrow the issues to simply the one of stormwater, I think, is inappropriate because my letter specifically addresses a question of ownership and whether or not there is an ownership interest that can be claimed. And I noticed in the materials that were handed to you that there's a reference to riparian rights, as if that gives an ownership interest. I've got some case citations I want to give to your attorney, and I'm going to give her some extras, so if anybody else wants to pick them up from her, you can. I would assert to you that that's an ownership question that hasn't been addressed. In addition, as the article today may have spelled out somewhat, but not completely clearly, there is litigation over this particular piece of property and the claim that my clients have to own that property. And with that, there is a lis pendens filed, which means there's something in the public records indicating there's an interest claimed. And we assert that our clients have an interest in the property and that without their consent and joinder in the application, you don't have all the proper parties on the application to proceed. And, you know, the logical question might be, well, wouldn't they want to have a building? They want to be building a building on this property, but they want to make sure it's one that fits their purposes and is built in such a way it doesn't harm adjacent property or create extra burdens for them that they never anticipated. So there's more than one issue that needs to be addressed by the staff, and that's why I asked to be able to speak. I thank you for the opportunity to do that, and I'm going to provide Carrie with the materials that I brought with me, and there will be some extras if somebody wants to look at it. So the issue is riparian rights and whether that's fee title and control of the property itself.
Okay.
Thank you, board members.
Thank you. Are there any other comments?
Yes, my name is David Knight with Knight, McGuire and Associates, and I'm a PE, and I've looked at this briefly, very briefly, and I just have to make a brief comment on the stormwater system that is immediately adjacent to an older building right next door. My client, Pinora Papalambros, owns the or is currently operating the Mardi Gras building right next door, built in 1959, slab on grade. The proposal is showing exfiltration trench that's literally feet away from the foundation of that building that will saturate the soils under the foundation and then in the northeast corner of that building significantly enough that it would cause me concern if it was my design. So I think that's maybe part of what is going to be looked at as you're moving forward. I'd like to be part of that review process as it does move forward for the interest of the adjacent property. There may be some other things that do come up with construction methods and so forth, but that was one thing I'd like to express tonight.
Thank you. Are there other comments?
John Nicholson, 413 North Grandview Avenue. I'm commuting from Miami back and forth, so I may not be at the next meeting. This has been going on for almost, 30 years? There's been 10 years in this particular item, and then it's been 2 years litigation. To come up at the last minute, I know these things happen, but you've got to be specific what's going to happen. Somebody asked if this is the end-all of what they're going to ask. And if you ever go to a TRC meeting, I've gone through it, staff can always add things at the last minute. They just constantly pop up. Oh, by the way, we never asked you this, but now you got to get documentations for this. So I'm asking you to define what it is that the applicant must provide you and then stop there. Don't let the staff keep dragging, because I went on for 6 months with my project. Someone else went on with 2 years with staff adding new things every time they went in. So define what it is that the applicant has to have, define what Dino is requesting, and then stick with it and make it, because 20 years, 30 years is a long time. We need to have this done. It is right in the very heart of our district. And both of them, I know both parties, they both have legitimate requests, but define them and get it done with. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other comments? Reed?
Just wanted to say that as far as the expediting this, we'll all be working diligently on all of the issues, and do want to say that we did have another submittal that came in by the applicant that's responding to some of the issues that were outstanding with TRT. We're going through that review process right now. So there are those things that are ongoing, and so we'll get through those very quickly, and next month we'll if it's the decision of this board for continuance, we'll be back then to hopefully have a complete review with the site plan.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other board comments? Do we have a motion?
This is the motion
It would be to continue to the March 12th meeting.
The entire.
motion. Pass it.
So your motion is to continue until the next March meeting.
Yes, sir.
I second the motion.
There board comment? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is DEV 2014-006, conditional use request for 415 Main Street.
All right. This is, for those of you who've been here before, we've seen these requests on a regular basis where on Main Street we have somebody who wants to serve alcohol within 500 feet of another establishment that serves alcohol. And this provision is intended to provide some additional review of these establishments. And so we have all of the information, I think, provided to us that staff is satisfied with what the applicant has provided in terms of meeting the conditional use requirements. And the applicant, I believe, is here. There you are. Turn my head far enough. So they may want to have something to say about their proposal so that they can enlighten all of us on what they're attempting to do there that I may not have covered in that staff report.
All right, thank you. Does the applicant want to address the board?
My name is Kyle Happel.
I'm Sarah Happel.
What's your address?
Oh, our home address or our business address? I'm sorry.
Either one.
415 Main Street, Daytona Beach, Florida. Kyle and I are originally from Pennsylvania. Just to give you a little background from us. We were on vacation here in Daytona Beach in October. We were actually traveling up the coast of Florida, starting in West Palm, actually starting in the Keys, and then moving up to West Palm and then up to Daytona looking for a bar to open. We came across this one. Actually, I figured this out the other day after we had eaten at Hog Heaven. We had traveled down Main Street and found the bar and met with Ralph Paget, the realtor, the next day. Saw the inside of the bar, fell in love with it. It wasn't until he was talking to us and telling us about Bike Week that we even knew that really happened here. So we were learning about it then, but very excited to be here and very much hoping that we are approved to start our business here. We're looking to be here for a long time.
Okay. Does the board have questions of the applicants?
I have a question.
Sure.
So when you intended to buy the bar, you didn't know about Bike Week?
We knew that Bike Week happened in Daytona. We weren't familiar that Main Street is one of the prime spots for Bike Week. So it wasn't our intention to ever how do I say, just show up for, a couple days and pull right back out. That's not our intention of opening a bar. Was to set up a retirement for my husband and myself. We both worked in the corporate world for 6 to 8 years, and we were ready to start our own project. We had both said we would never quit our corporate world if it wasn't for going into business together, and that's what we're here to do.
Well, that's really refreshing to hear, isn't it? Thank you.
Sure.
Are there other comments or questions?
Yes. This is from Mr. Reed. How long has this place been closed?
I don't have the exact. It's more than 3 months. We've checked into it. It was an abandoned use, and that's why it has to be reestablished. You're welcome.
So you guys going to be open all year round?
Yes, sir. Every day.
Okay. Because there's been a lot of places there that have been, been open.
We've heard
and-
some stories.
Well, yeah, they're horrible stories.
Yeah.
And, as long as you understand that, there's a certain time you need to be open and a certain time that, even if you do decide to take a vacation, but there's a certain amount of days. If I'm asked to think, it's 57 or 53 that needs to be open.
We plan to be open every day, 13 hours a day at minimum. And on the weekends during busier times, we'll stay open a little bit later.
May I ask about like the menu of the food? What type of theme?
Sure.
The menu, it was in our packet. I don't know if you have a copy or not, but it's going to be bar food, but it's going to be higher end, better bar food. It's going to be, we're going to specialize in burgers, a lot of stuffed burgers, cheesesteaks, wings, French fries, stuff along those lines. We're going to keep it easy, but it's going to be, it will be a full menu, but like higher end, good stuff that we can try and draw a place to eat. We want to be open for lunch so we can have a lunch crowd. At some point down the line, once we get an established, open and running for a while, we do want to open up for brunch as well on Saturdays and Sundays and have a breakfast business as well.
And what about renovations of the exterior and the interior as far as the designs and the decor go? Specific direction you're going?
As far as interior renovations, we've done a lot of work to the kitchen in terms of getting the appliances back up and running. So we have put a lot of work into that. We do have new signage outside if you've driven down the street. As far as we're aware, the interior and exterior does comply with the standards for Daytona. If there isn't anything, we'll certainly let us know, and we want to comply in any way that we can. One of the biggest things in there, we wanted the decor to be appealing. When we showed up to the building, all of the bar stools were mix matched, everything that was already there. So we did get rid of all of those bar stools, and we have 60 new ones in there that are all the same color, chrome bottoms with black tops. It does look very nice inside. I think the decor in there, other than that, is great. Eventually, we would like to maybe paint. But I don't think there's anything structurally wrong.
So you don't have any major plans for like a major renovation as far as the theme of the restaurant and that sort of thing?
We do not. Our theme is going to be kind of like a sports bar, rock and roll type theme. We want to make sure that people come to see some great bands there. We'll have darts as well as a golden tee machine for golf. And we are equipped with 12 televisions. 12 televisions. One is a projection screen, which we're considering offering like a movie night where people can come down and, see a movie, have some popcorn, that sort of thing. But no major structural changes have taken place, or do we plan on it unless we're told that something is not up
Okay,
to
and how
par.
many bar stools did you say you replaced?
How many do we replace?
Well, how many do you have in total?
We have...
There's 60 on the bottom floor, and there is...
Okay, so you more than meet the requirement of at least 50 patrons.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
I would just have to reiterate what Gerard said, is that I think the short period of time I've been on this board, I think I've seen 2 applicants come by with the same, and just make sure that you're with it there every day.
Yeah, and that's absolutely our plan. We will be very hands-on, and we plan to be here for the long haul. This is what we want to do. This is our goal.
Like I said, we're looking for this to set up our retirement. And if I planned on that happening in 10 days during Bike Week, I'd be going back to work pretty quickly. So.
But you will be open for Bike Week.
Absolutely. Well,
That's-
Yes.
I mean, assuming we.
That's the plan.
Are you telling me? Or?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, a couple of things. How's your parking? How's the parking?
Go ahead. Councilor.
We have the back half of the parking lot that is across from Hollywood. It's about 100 by 125 feet. So we do have plenty of off-street parking. I just received a quote from a company, Parking Marking, that they're going to come and actually line the parking lot as well to make it. Because right now it just seems like it's a big empty lot, so we're going to line the parking lot, and as well, we plan to go to the city to find out what kind of signs we can put out there as well, just to make sure everyone knows and designate that that's our parking lot.
I just want to make a comment to you guys because I know the area very well, and I think you need to meet your neighbors and get friendly with your neighbors because there's been an issue between the two buildings where the beneficiary are the tow trucks. The tow trucks have a field day between those two buildings. So, and there's been a war where the police department was involved and they don't have to waste too much time over there. So make sure that it's understandable with your neighbors because there's a big issue with parking between your building and the other building not far from there.
I agree.
Okay. Are there any other board comments? All right. Public comment?
Thank you.
Thank you.
John Nicholson, 413 North Grandview Avenue. I welcome them to Daytona Beach, but my main concern is the ongoing rollover of bars on Main Street. This will be our 6th biker bar on Main Street at the present time. There may be 7 if you consider Dirty Harry's as a biker bar. There are only so many bikers year-round. Bike Week, we could have 10 more biker bars on Main Street. It wouldn't hurt us. But during out the year, it's very difficult. So I would ask them, what kind of location were they looking for? Were they looking for a bar from Key West North, or were they looking for a restaurant bar? We did change the laws several years ago that our bars could not meet the 51%. So we said, okay, if you did $10,000 worth of equipment, we could give you a liquor license. Well, the problem is we have a restaurant. Well, we only have one bar on Main Street. That's all. All the rest are restaurants. We have 12 restaurants and one bar. Of those restaurants, 2 restaurants don't serve food, which is a problem. Okay, I firmly believe that restaurants ought to have food. And if you have a law that says they have to have a kitchen, you really ought to enforce that because you've got one restaurant without a kitchen. But I think we're having a problem if we're having too many because we just had Bad Boys open up with a great big motorcycle. Great signage, but again, it's an indication that it's a biker bar. There's a limited number of bikers, so we have to look at what Evelyn Fine from Hovboard and her concept that when tourists come in, the number one thing they do is go out to restaurants and then they go out to shopping. They don't go for biker bars. They want diversity. If you've ever been to Key West, the very famous bar down there, Sloppy Joe's, it was a dive, just like our Boot Hill Saloon. But everybody goes there for lunch. They go there for an early dinner. That's the kind of thing we need on Main Street. So I'm asking them to look at what they're serving, that it be reasonable, and that there be something, one signature dish that will draw people down there. Everybody in the world has fingers. Everybody has poppers. So it's got to be something different. The days that people are open, I think you also should look at changing those. It should be a few more. Your premise is that they get 52 weeks a year, they get 2 days a week to close. Then they get 2 weeks vacation. Then they only have to be open 6 hours. So you're limiting what we want for a full-time restaurant on Main Street or business on Main Street. So you have to, I believe you have to look at that again, kind of expand it to maybe 300 days a year they should be open. And lastly, parking lot. Teresa, you may know better than I how many years ago that the city owned the parking lot, transferred it, and they were going to redo the parking lot. That parking lot is like a roller coaster. It looks terrible. At some point, I'm asking you to help the owners with some funding and put a parking lot that's conducive to parking that looks nice on Main Street. Because even if you paint it and put lines, it's going to look terrible year-round. So if we have to dig into CRA funds, and we have $1 million, believe it or not, that we can do it because it's something that is very eye-catching and it's in the center of Main Street. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there additional board comments?
Well, I had a comment for Reed. Did you explain the grant application for the different venues that they could go for as far as exterior?
I think we made a referral. You had an opportunity to talk to someone in our staff about that, correct? Okay, yes, we've done that.
All right, do we have a motion?
I move for approval.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Good luck. Next item on the agenda is item number 7, discussion items. Item 7A is special events.
Okay.
This was from last month. We started the discussion, right?
Yeah. What I've done is we're making a transition here with the board members, and this item that you have in here on both sides of one page is it says the chairman's suggested revisions to master plan guidelines. That's former chairman Dan Webster, who's here still, correct, in the audience, and I think it probably is appropriate if we want to have a discussion of this that Mr. Webster address the board.
Agreed. Thank you. Dan, would you like to address the board?
Mr. Chairman, Daniel Webster, 21 North Halifax Avenue, Daytona Beach, Florida. Quite a different complexion from a month ago. Welcome, everyone. This is something that actually started a couple years ago, dealing with the special events, mainly Bike Week, Biketoberfest, master plan process on Main Street. And there's a set of published guidelines that the city has adopted that I thought were inadequate on several points. And there's been discussion through several meetings and several generations, really, of members of this board dealing with these. And they were brought up last month in a lot of discussion. Hopefully the new members got to see the minutes or view the video from last month and such. And we were short on time, and rather than, it was originally denied as to the totality of basically what's on these two sheets, which was a condensed version of the totality of the list. And we were running short on time and said, well, let's just come back next month, and then next month I'm out here. But that's all right. So anyways, what these were is some points that were brought up, and there were positive discussion with respect to each of these proposed points, and the idea was that maybe come back this month and address them one at a time. The first point dealt with the definition of contiguous under the guidelines. And contiguous under the guidelines is anything within 60 feet, even across the road. We can have two parcels. If they're across the street from each other, they're deemed contiguous, and so therefore that property owner can use both those parcels for their special events operations. And that kind of flies in the face of any other definition of contiguous that's out there, which means that property should be side by side. And also was proposing that the properties actually be owned by the same entity, because it's my understanding there's actually different entities partnering up and saying, well, we're together on this and we're going to call ourselves one entity, but they're technically not. So if you're going to have contiguous property, it should be together and it should be owned by the same entity to avoid shenanigans with respect to fictitious operations and such. Second was the issue of tents and special events. And this was a proposal to try and limit the amount of tent area a operator on Main Street can have with respect to their overall space, to try and promote the idea of we would build buildings again on Main Street and have buildings as opposed to simply tents on a temporary basis. And so had the concept of saying that we're going to limit the size of a tent or temporary roof coverage on any contiguous parcels at one site to a maximum of 100% of the interior covered area, covered roof area of the parcel. If you have a 10,000 square foot building, you can have 10,000 square feet of tents. And if it's 5,000, it's 5,000. And then proposal was actually to reduce that over to 50% of that over a period of 3 years, trying to motivate and provide incentive to build buildings once again as opposed to tents. A bottle restriction, prohibit the sale of an exterior beverage in a glass bottle. just like any sporting event. You never go to a football game, basketball game, or anything and find a sale of a beer bottle. It's in plastic or it's in cups. Because there have been incidents when I'm walking Main Street and you see bottles being carried, bottles being broken, and especially now also with spring break going to be tied to Bike Week. Okay? The schedule has changed. And it looks like for the foreseeable future, we're going to have Bike Week and spring break at the same time. So you got all these spring breakers and all their flip-flops with beer bottles. And I think that's a bad mix. Porta-johns. There is no requirement in the guidelines that there be any porta-johns on the properties on Main Street that are serving food or alcohol. Now, most of them do, but there's a few that don't, particularly Main Street Station. And I provided photos where they have the biggest operation virtually going with 2 bands, all this food and liquor, and 0 porta-johns. So came up with a proposal to say, all right, let's put a minimum of 1 on the site, or 1 per 2,000 square feet of your area that you're operating. Seems perfectly reasonable. All Teresa's operations, most all other operations you go in, there's a nice setup of porta-johns. They're clean, they're maintained, but there's a few bad apples that don't do anything. And that's wrong. People are buying a lot of beer there and going and offloading at other places, and usually not in a porta-john. Okay, and it's gotten worse with spring break too. Exterior amplified sound. We have situations where there are certain operators on Main Street. One of them in particular, Main Street Station, operates 2 large amplified sound stages at the same time. There's directly across the street, there's more amplified sound with large stages. You got Boot Hill beside that. You have bands competing with bands. So proposal was, let's come up with something that's going to help soften the impact of those bands on the neighborhoods that are surrounding. So one was, you can only have 1 amplified stage system and an exterior per site. I think that's perfectly reasonable. Why should you have 2 bands, 1 operating in this corner and 1 operating in that corner at the same time, and they're competing against each other, much less everyone else. Everybody has to get louder and louder to be heard. And if they want to operate 1 inside and 1 outside, that's fine. Last month I had the proposal that they be limited to 90 decibels or 70 decibels just outside. I've upped that to 90. 90 is a pretty good volume. The problem with the noise ordinance is if you are going to, it says 70 decibels, but it's 100 feet away. There is no way during an event like Bike Week that you can stand 100 feet away from any noise and know where that noise is emanating from on a sound meter. So that's totally useless. So I said, let's make it 90, which is a pretty good volume. And if you're standing right beside the building and pointing it at that band that's projecting noise outside, if it's over 90 decibels, that's too loud and that shouldn't be permitted. But if they want to contain it inside, more power to them. Next, if we're going to have these exterior stages, enclose them on the back where the band is and on the sides of where the band is, forward a distance, I believe I said 4 feet, so that, and with 2 layers, so that all that noise that they're making is going to be going forward, not backwards into the sides. It seems perfectly reasonable to me because there's been many, many times when those bands are projecting music that's facing Main Street to the south and the noise is going as far north as above Seabreeze.
And let me interrupt you there. When you talk about enclosing, you're just talking about like if it's a tent set up, just like
tarp.
Tarp.
It's like tarps on the back
So
behind
you're
the
not
band.
enclosing. You're just creating a buffer.
A shield. If you alter the band and it's facing this way, I'm saying you put 2 layers of tarps behind you and you put 2 layers of tarps over here.
Okay.
It's wide open this way.
Okay.
Okay? So it lets the music go to where it's supposed to go. And that, I think, will go a long ways towards avoiding the sound pollution into the neighborhoods. Okay. Trash containers. There's also a problem with respect to trash containers during the events, and they're not maintained and contained within their property. And we have photos where they're taking them and they're putting them onto the sidewalk. So they have more room on their property but there's trash containers on the sidewalk, and this is not for public to come by and drop trash in. This is where they're putting their trash. Okay? Contain it on your property. Don't go using the sidewalks for your trash container areas. Next, a proposal with respect to the master plan applications, and that is that they contain scaled drawings showing the entire site and contain a scale, say in 1 feet and 1/4 inch or whatever it is, identify all physical elements and have the dimensions, and identify total square footage of the site, buildings, vendor spaces, etc. The reason this is important is because last year there was a major hearing in here dealing with one of the properties on Main Street, and the big issue was, well, you didn't have this drawn, and you didn't say that was 12 feet, okay? And it wasn't scaled, and there were no dimensions. It was just kind of roughly sketched on there, and the whole thing almost got thrown out, and the city settled it when I think they shouldn't have after the fact because of the challenge, because of lack of specificity. So heaven forbid that if they're going to have to bring in a site plan that shows exactly what they're going to provide on that site, that it be drawn to scale and have dimensions, so that the city, when they come out and do their inspection beforehand, can say, well, you're not 12 feet back like you said you were going to be. You're not 6 feet, whatever it is. To me, anytime you go to build a building, you're going to have a scaled site plan with dimensions. They should do it for Bike Week too. And that will make it much more enforceable for the city staff when they do their inspections. And last is an issue that I think Dino actually came up with, and that was that no parcel which has a building demolished after the date of adoption of these, which have to go from here, probably to Planning Board, to City Commission. This is only the first step of some recommendations. That no parcel which has a building demolished after this date shall be permitted to have any tent or temporary roof covering over or upon the area in which the building was demolished unless a building of comparable size is constructed on such parcel. And the idea is, don't come in, tear down a building, and put up tents. If you come in, tear down the building, you want to build another one of comparable size, then you can put the tents up that anyone else could. But don't come in, tear down the building, and just put up tents. That's what, with assistance and input from many other members of this board, we revised for consideration tonight. I'll be glad to answer any questions or whatever also.
Thank you. Does the board have questions or comments for Mr. Webster?
Well, I think it is my opinion that we open it up to the general public, and then when we look at this item, we might have you or one of us present each item by item, so we could take each item one at a time.
It's not my call.
Okay.
I'll just be glad to stick around till you're done. Thank you.
Yes, there's somebody here that I'd like to have an opinion about, if we're allowed. Is the people that deal with this most of the time is the police department. If it's possible to get their opinion.
Certainly.
About some of these items, about the bottles and all that.
Sit in the corner and be quiet.
Which part? Bottles. I know bottles we've been working with.
Can you identify yourself just for the record, please?
James Newcomb, captain from the police department.
Thank you.
One issue is the bottles. We've been working on that with cultural services and the special events planning, trying to move that way. The different Main Street festivals, which have been great. And that's something that a lot of places have looked at, and we're trying, even meeting with some of the beer distributors, just for some of these things to have the option of not having bottles during some of the bigger events so that they don't come onto the street. It does pose a problem. People drop them, just innocent things that they do. So we're looking at that and trying to go into the plastic cups or cans. So that one I would say we would be all for, something in that respect.
Some of these issues that are here, you guys are standing there 16, 18 hours, like the amplifier sound, the Porto Johns and all that stuff. Is that being a big issue for you guys lately, in the past?
I can't say over the last few years we've had problems with issues with portalets. People seem to find them. We do get the occasional person that stops and finds a tree or on the side of the road, but we have that with any event. I don't see that as have been a big problem. Noise, surprisingly, our lowest amount of noise complaints probably come during Bike Week. We have more that comes out of the Seabreeze area and some other areas. So that's, for us right now, it's not that big. Not to say that it can't change, but for now, that's not a big issue for us.
Well, what is your opinion on 90 decibels? Is that
in our ordinances, we have sound set up two ways. There's a decibel level reading, which deals with a hard number and also deals with above the ambient noise. And I think that's a little bit what Mr. Webster is referring to, is ambient noise is that noise that's there without that outside entity, the band or anything else. Bike Week ambient noise is very high.
So do you agree with Mr. Webster, in order to identify the source, it would be easier to go with a decibel reading on site versus 100 feet away?
I don't think it's going to matter during Bike Week. That's not going to, your ambient noise is everywhere. Being right at the edge of a property versus being 100 feet away, you're just getting different amounts of noise. Our big thing comes with the other part of the ordinance that deals with something called nuisance noise, where any noise that bothers people, they will try to file a complaint on, or file a complaint when it's valid. So the decibels, I mean, I've taken decibel readings for years on Main Street and Seabreeze. It may help, but I don't know that, I couldn't tell you that that level would be any much of a help, that set level.
If there's a problem and the neighbors are complaining about it.
And usually it's a matter of adjusting speakers, maybe turning the volume down a little bit.
So you're saying the current system works?
I think current system works fine.
Could I take you back to the bottles?
Yes.
We have a few different kinds of festivals on the street. Some of the smaller festivals, the street is open, and customers can go from business to business with a drink. It's my understanding, well, certainly Bike Week, the street is not open. There's traffic on the street. And it's my understanding that no venue allows anyone to leave their premises with an open container. That is beverage law. And so I don't, there's two different deals. And I know that we're all working on the smaller events where the street is open, that there be no glass. But during Bike Week, I was not aware that there was, if there is a problem, it's as an operator, it seems to us that it's individuals arriving at the street bringing their own.
During Bike Week, it's not as much of a problem with people walking out with bottles.
Yeah.
The festivals where we close Main Street and we open up that exemption, and that's where it's more of an issue.
Right, and we're working on that
right.
to do away with the glass.
Now, during, I know that with the Main Street Cafe, normally, I guess it's a state law that you're supposed to barricade around the area where you have a sidewalk cafe, but I guess we made an exception for the Main Street Cafe that barricade does not exist, but they're allowed to have outside serving of alcoholic beverages. So in this instance, this would be an instance where a bottle could go outside and walk on Main Street.
Well, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, do you see what I'm trying to say? There's not, it's not a designated area. There's no barriers around. So a bottle that makes it outside could wander.
I don't think we're ever going to stop a bottle being on any event. That's ridiculous. It's going to happen.
But
I think we can reduce the amount by maybe pushing vendors to serve plastic bottles during.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
The
dangers of the.
we can ask that we could just.
Yeah, I'm not saying to cut down the amount of beer sales. I'm saying to change the beer from
I don't think we can really
bottled.
institute that per vendors. The vendors are just going to have to do it with their own accord, just realize that it's becoming a problem. I think it should be up to bar owners.
Are there a lot of incidents of injury with these bottles?
It's not very much, not very prevalent, no. We'll more or less find broken bottles or bottles laying around. A lot of times it'll be addressed before it gets to be an issue.
Gets cleaned up, you mean?
Yeah, you don't have really people walking around much barefooted and stuff during the biker events. During the Main Street festivals, it's a little more prevalent.
So it's really not a problem from a police standpoint?
No, not during Bike Week.
Okay.
That was the main thing. That was the main thing, was to find out, having a bottle, was there a problem? Is that a problem during Bike Week?
No.
Okay, that was the main, okay.
Was there other board comments?
Well,
Are
I
there?
feel that there's not a problem from the police standpoint. I don't think we should be, issuing regulations on something that's not a problem.
Well,
Yeah,
first of
that's what
all,
we have to do.
there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 issues here.
Well, that's the
Though,
bottom
we've
issues.
addressed 3 that I agree with you on.
Okay.
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 Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there public comments?
I have.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I just had a question about, it was brought to my attention with some of the Main Street business owners about the tents and the reduction of size. I just want to know what the definition between a tent and a lot of these vendors would have kind of like an awning that's outside. Is that considered, I know what you're talking about, like tents. I'm talking about like the big circus style tents. I understand the reduction of those to push putting buildings on those 2 lots in particular that I believe we're talking about. And now there's other parcels that are out there that have vendors that are out in like courtyards or whatnot that have like aluminum awnings with a tarp, which they're taken down every year, but is that considered a tent? Or I guess temporary roofing is what I'm reading.
Is that a tent,
I
Reed?
guess anybody, that's what, yeah, sorry, Dan.
My intent was that would constitute a tent, too. Any covered area that's temporary as opposed to a building.
So that would be the vendors included also?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if you're covering something on a temporary basis, to put vendors in there, whether it's a big tent or a small tent, it's still...
There's a couple of properties that do have buildings out there, and they're totally under the restriction, if we do enforce this, of the maximum amount of percentage on their square footage. So even if they're under that square footage and they have
then they wouldn't have a problem.
Okay, so it's just basically these gigantic, like circus-style tents.
The idea was if you have 5,000 square feet, you can have 5,000 square
And
feet.
that doesn't restrict it, the 50% over 3 years. You can still have those as long as it's under the square footage of your property.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, you add all the square footage together to get to the
So like if you have a 3,000 square venue that's on Main Street, you can still have 3,000 square foot of temporary roofing, and that doesn't get reduced
Right.
of the 50% of every year. Is that, or 3 years, sorry.
Or
I'm reading here.
No, it does. It does. The percentage of allowable tent or marquee
Well, I'm
or
just-
whatever you want to call it, of allowable square footage would be reduced over 3 years.
So it'd be including even if you have like a 3,000 square.
If you have a 3,000
venue.
square foot building, currently, if this passes the way it is, you'd be allowed 3,000 square feet cumulative of outdoor sales under tents or marquees. In over 3 years, it would be reduced to 1,500 square feet of cumulative.
Okay.
And that's something we could talk about. If you're comfortable with 100%,
Well, I know-
we could stop there. If you're
I just
comfortable
know-
with the reduction, that's something that we'll get to after public discussion. So that way we could hear what everybody has to say, and then we could tackle the items one at a time.
Okay.
Are there any other board comments?
I guess I'm not quite sure the structure we're following here.
I mean,
I'm assuming that and I understand,
Yeah, yeah.
we normally
Yeah.
open it up to the
Yeah.
public,
So is it
and
public? Is that
then
where we are?
after that,
Okay.
we'll
Okay.
we'll have our comments.
I'm jumping the gun again.
It's all right.
Yeah. John?
John Nicholson, 413 North Granbury Avenue.
Hi, can you
After
speak loud?
30 years of, I'm only 4 blocks away, so I go to the event. I'm there before it starts, I'm there after it closes, and I'm there when they're cleaning up. So I see most of what's going on. The bottles during bike, recall seeing a glass bottle on Main Street when they cleaned up. I see a lot of metal, aluminum cans, and you see the guys coming out rushing to grab them quickly before the staff gets it. But for bottles, I only see them during festivals. And then it is really bad. I understand where Dan's talking about. It's just horrendous, and it takes a lot to clean them up. So if you're going to look at that, I would say look at it. As Teresa says, they're working on it. Look at it for that. For Bike Week, it has never been an issue, and I've never noticed it. I don't recall, and I'm sure it must have happened, using a bottle in a bar for a fight. I don't recall ever hearing about one, but I know it does occur. I've run bars before. So that, again, like Froggy's got, 6,000 bouncers during Bike Week. There are a tremendous number of men in there, so it really doesn't happen that I can recall. But the tents, Again, that's the itinerant vendor issue. I've never been to a carnival or any other festivity, Greek festival, St. Timothy's back home, in which they do not have tents, they do not have food, they do not have rides, etc., that all come in, and then in the middle of the night, the last night, they're gone. All right? Bike Week is no different. It is these tents, it is these vendors that draw the crowd. Okay? I understand that Main Street is the epicenter, but part of that fun and that ambiance is all the vending. When they're back home at Kmart or Walmart, there's a limited supply of things that they can buy, all right, that say Bike Week. The only volume is on Main Street, and that's where they're coming to shop. That's where they want to buy whatever it is, and parts. I remember Tom had a store there with God knows what, and people are constantly saying, God, I never thought I'd find this. So those kinds of things come to Main Street, and I think vending, although our other merchants are going to be hurt by it, but it is something that they would not carry. Paul Paulides would never carry a gear shift or a part for a motorcycle. It just does not happen. He would never carry the volume or the variety of T-shirts that would be found on Main Street. So I know this has been an issue for years, but look at it as a part and parcel to Main Street, and the size of the tent matters. There are only two huge tents, one on the laundromat parcel and the other on the hotel parcel, and they are mega tents. But what's good about those two tents is I've stood behind them. You can't hear the bands. When you're in the parking lot that the county owns, you're standing there and there's no sound. But if you're in the businesses across the street, they complain. The biker businesses themselves that come in temporarily hate them, especially when Jägermeister was there. It was so bad. So what Dan is talking about is, okay, you're a mile or two away, you can't hear it. Frank Heckman does his little meter thing, but he takes his hearing aid out. So without his hearing aid, he says, oh, I don't have a problem. Well, that doesn't help either. So I understand what Dan's saying is stand in front of it, and if it's mega really loud, you can tell it's coming from this particular band, and then adjust it accordingly, because it is horrendous. And those that live there, I'm 4 blocks away and I hear it. I mean, you're used to it, you don't complain anymore, especially not to Frank, because nothing gets done. But after you've been there a while, yeah, you get used to it, but you'd rather not have this noise. So if we can contain it, I think, when did Frank talk to Tom and you moved the speakers? 11 years ago, something like that? Something simple as moving speakers, it made a tremendous difference to the neighborhood. Perhaps what Dan is asking about in terms of the testing, it would be a tremendous help for the neighborhood. Okay? And lastly, we've got to quit tinkering with Bike Week. We either want it or don't. It is a tremendous benefit, but it comes with problems. All right? The whole idea of doing this 30 years ago was that you were going to have money to fix up your stores and whatnot. Well, they did. They fixed up. But then there was inherent problems because nobody rents the businesses when it's not Bike Week. You end up with 75 empty stores. And they thought several years ago that if we say, well, you had to be open for 265 days a year, that would force the businesses to be open. Well, if they're not there, they can't be open. So if there's an empty building, you get an empty building. And it will stay an empty building. A gentleman came before this board 8 years ago, and he bought some property, was going to invest, and his suggestion was find out what's in Duval Street, what's in Bourbon Street, the kind of businesses, because Bourbon Street is busy all year round, and they have bars up the yin-yang up there. What kind of businesses are on that street that are open year-round? And entice them to Main Street. Because you can't put a children's toy store there, because it's not going to work. And I know Jim Chisholm says there are plenty of people walking up and down Main Street all year. They're not. You stand there, you count 3 here. An hour later, you count 5 over there. And that's it. There's no volume there. And you're not going to get volume until you get businesses. And you're not going to get business until you get feet on the ground. It's one of those catch-22s. So I'm asking you to look into what kind of businesses you can entice. And if you have to subsidize them, do so. Because they're not going to come on their own. There's just not that foot traffic. Thank you.
Or other public comments?
Hello, my name is Gary Kaliopoulos. I've got Beach Express 101 South Atlantic. I am in the retail industry itself, directly related to Bike Week and, year-round souvenir
Sales.
type of business. And itinerant vendors, it's a problem. And I couldn't agree with Mr. Webster more about eventually slowly limiting the size of the tents, decreasing them, because I have seen my business and my fellow business owners' businesses, neighbors, decrease over the last 15 years because as more and more tents, as you see a bigger proliferation of tents opening up throughout the city, all the static brick and mortar businesses that are here year-round that support employees, that pay their property taxes, that participate in all the local events, our businesses are penalized because you have an individual who comes in for Bike Week, sets up his tent, not required to have any of the requirements that a static business is made to have. They come in, they reap the profits, and then they take off out of town. And I have seen over the last 20 years, my family's been in this type of business in multiple locations for over 30 years. And slowly over the last 15, 20 years, as we've seen more and more tents, I probably do half, if not less than half of the Bike Week business that I used to. Granted, as John says, some people like some of that, but what type of atmosphere do you want for the future of Daytona? If you keep on allowing individuals to tear down buildings, which is their right to do that, but it's not their right to sit there and throw up a tent every time they want to tear down a new building on Main Street. As we remember, before Nick George actually did it, that wasn't allowed. Then he took it to court, he fought it, I don't know what type of loophole he found, and then everything kind of turned into a circus act. So if we want Main Street to actually change to year-round businesses, you got to make some hard decisions here, because right now we're trying to right the wrongs of the last 25 years of some pretty pathetic decisions that have been made in the city of Daytona. And the people that have been here for the last 25, 30 years dealing with this, they get sick and tired after a little while. You like to have as much optimism as possible, but you become extremely pessimistic in Daytona because we don't do anything right. And I don't mean to talk badly about people that have been on some of these boards for a while, but I think if everybody thinks deep down, we have not done what's good for Daytona. And if anybody can say anything about Daytona, if there was a tombstone for Daytona, it would say unbelievable potential, never tapped. It's unfortunate. We have so much to offer here, and we can be so much of a better city. We just got to make sure and make the right decisions and steer us in the right direction, because we're doing all these other tourist destinations a big favor. We offer them very little competition whatsoever. They're doing better than us. They pull in better tourist numbers, and it's evident. We see from the abundance of empty buildings on A1A, it's not improving. We're having a tough time, and we need to make sure that whatever we do it for the right of not just tomorrow, but for the next 10, 15 years.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other public comments? Okay. So this is an item of discussion. I just wanted to make the comment that last month we voted on it on its entirety, and it failed 3-5. I would like to gauge whether or not we should continue on with the discussion from the board.
Well, if since this is an item that's been continued, what I'd like to do, and last month when it was 3-5, we have a new board here, okay? And what I'd rather do is just break it down one at a time, talk about each item, put a vote on it. I have some pictures I'd like to pass around. If each person could take one, there's 2 different pictures. Just take one of each. And, is it okay, Mr. Chairman, that I proceed with the first item?
Well, I don't know. When I look at it, I don't know that we can do it in individual sections. I don't think we have enough data to be able to say, should we sit here and do a static vote on redefined contiguous, or tents, or bottles, or porta-johns?
I think we should do it individually and do it quickly.
Right.
That's what I think.
Yeah.
And let's do it.
Well, let's do it individually without discussion then.
Okay. Well, I'd like Well, there's got to be a little discussion because, I mean, you got
It can be
to,
discussion, but let's.
right, but keep it to a minimal, you know,
Yes.
not, well, like, for instance, let me just take the first item, okay? And then it could go up to discussion if you
I
guys
understand,
want,
but
but I
with due
mean,
respect, there should be a discussion.
yeah, there should
I
be,
mean, it
you know.
should, it should not be voted without discussion, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to agree.
Okay.
I mean, but the first item, I just passed two pictures around
Yes.
to everybody. Okay, one picture is for the audience's sake, is a picture of beach photo that's for sale. Right across the street is a picture of, I guess, bad guy or wise guys or whatever you may want to call it. Both properties are contiguous to each other. Contiguous means they're separated by a right-of-way, which is Main Street, but in theory, the property owner of Wise Guys could turn around and purchase Beach Photo across the street and carry, if I'm wrong, correct me, tear down Beach Photo, which is actually an incentive now, it seems, on Main Street, and put up a tent and actually have outside sales of alcohol on that corner. I think that's embarrassing that we create incentives to tear down buildings. And I'm giving you two pictures of a building that's capable of purchasing. It works either way, though. The reason it works better with the picture of the Wise Guys is because he's a bar. He could actually sell outside, and with the law being contiguous, he could go across the street. And that's not right. Main Street, we've seen it happen 2-3 times. And in Teresa's case, it wasn't. I voted in favor of Teresa because I think that building that she tore down was just it was more like a storage building. It was a small building that was incidental to the entire property. You know, we have seen buildings on Main Street torn down for itinerant vending or for outdoor sales of alcohol or what have you. And I would like to open up. What I'd like to do is every bullet point that Mr. Chairman has on this revised one, and by the way, I appreciate you doing this because what he did was he took the board comments into consideration and revised them to accommodate us for this month. And that's a lot of time out of his, and we have, and the other thing is he's an attorney. So, I mean, thank God we didn't have to pay you for this. But what I would like to do is take each bullet point one at a time, discuss it, and that is my opinion. And I move for approval, just to move for approval, but it opens it up for discussion of the first item, which is Section 1 labeled.
I just want to have one question, and I think it's legal and read. If, like Dino said, somebody buys across the street, was the liquor license for that place feasible for across the street, or he has to go through the state?
I don't know.
Okay.
That's
I don't know.
beverage law, not zoning.
Yes,
I mean,
exactly. That's my point. Is if like Dino said, if somebody buys, they're allowed to do whatever they're doing in one business on the other business. I think it's not.
Well, it still would have to
This board-
apply within 500 feet of another.
It's the definition of contiguous.
Yes.
Right. So,
And I think what Dino's saying is his understanding of the current regulation that this building that's across the street could consider this building contiguous
Right.
if it owned both properties.
Right. The thing about tearing down is actually the last bullet point of this, which is demolished buildings. I'm using this example as of the two buildings, and I'm going to bring up those pictures again when we get to the demolished building part.
So before we go further, we have a motion to accept Section 1, which is the one that starts redefine contiguous by deleting as is. Do we have a second?
Well, if we delete it, how are we going to read? How are we going to?
No, it would be redefined by deleting the language which allows parcels to be contiguous when they are separated by a public right-of-way. So what we're doing is that for it to be contiguous, they have to be next to each other.
Okay.
And we're adding in that the contiguous parcel to be owned by 100% ownership identical. So it's one person owning the same property on both.
The properties must be side by side.
Right.
Nothing
side by
in
side,
between.
not across the street from each other, and not separated by a public right-of-way.
I make the motion
Well, I move for approval. You're seconding.
I second.
We have a second. Do we have discussion?
Now I would do roll call.
I'd like to say something. We don't have the existing guidelines in front of us, do we?
No, we do
Tonight,
not.
I didn't bring last month's.
Teresa, every single month, here, I'll give you
Yeah, but
mine.
well,
Every
and-
single month you put it off to next month.
I've never put this off.
No, last month you made a motion that we look at it this month so that
I didn't
we
make that motion.
I did.
Okay, but you brought up, it was part of the discussion item.
She's just asking if you have the
Exactly.
notes, right?
Yeah, I just think we're wading into stuff that we don't have all of the information. Because I believe, isn't it, I mean, I reference the guidelines frequently, but I think it already does have that it has to be common ownership, I think. I mean, that's what I mean. I just think we're doing stuff that,
We don't have all the data.
My understanding is that the current regulations is contiguous can be separated by other pieces of property, and that's what's
Right.
on the.
but I guess I thought it had to have common ownership.
It does have to have common ownership.
Okay, so he's got that in
Dino
here,
was-
but it's already covered.
No, they don't define it. Common ownership can be like Dino and his brother own this piece, and Dino and his cousin own this other piece. That's not identical, but Dino's common to both, and so that's interpreted as being acceptable now. And I say it should be Dino and his brother owning both parcels to be the same ownership. That is truly same ownership as opposed to really two different entities.
And ownership is the same as a lease? If you're leasing it, it's the same as owning it?
If you're leasing it, yeah, I would think as long as it's leased by the same operation in a long-term type lease, that would be fine.
Okay.
Leases and ownership in Florida law.
Okay.
What is more important, Dan, in your opinion, that they have same ownership or that they be literally physically contiguous side by side? Or both?
The contiguity is the first point, but the second one I think is also important because I've heard of situations where you have different partnerships or whatever that come together and say, oh, we're both going to lease this, or we're both going to be owners and say we're jointly the owners and operate as one.
Okay.
When they're really not the same ownership.
And what is the opposition to larger, to them going across the street? What is the basis of that? I made
well,
notes.
I think Dino's making a great example, and it was going on down at the rec when it was operating, where it's been shut down 15 times.
But I guess I'm missing the harm.
What's the negativity to it? Why are you opposed to it?
Well, I'll tell you what. Well, my opinion of the harm is
Promotes tearing down.
right. It promotes tearing down buildings. That's the harm.
Well, let me say, you can tear down a building, but it's another thing if you want to use that site for the event.
There's
you can
no,
tear down a building. It doesn't mean you can use it to conduct retail.
To put tents on.
Yeah.
I think it's the last bulletin on this thing is demolish buildings. I think that's more of a key thing that we need
Okay,
to
but we're identifying this one issue.
Right.
I know,
And
but
I just want to say.
it seems like it's
Wait, first let me ask you something, Teresa, just
So
for
are we
clarification
combining
purposes.
these? Is that what we're doing?
For clarification purposes, I don't think you violate this.
But I'm not talking about me, per se.
No, but I'm asking you, do you violate this in any way? Because I don't know of a property
it's
that
not
you have
relevant
that's
to me.
separated by the public right-of-way.
It's not relevant to
Okay, so
anything.
it's not relevant to you.
To mine, but I'm not speaking for me. I'm looking at this as a bike week guideline that pertains to all of the areas that are allowed to do.
But can I
bike week.
ask you something? Do you know of a parcel that this disturbs you?
I'm not disturbed. I'm just wondering why we're tampering with this guideline that has been approved by the City Commission and created, I think, by the Bike Week Task Force that is the body that has been commissioned to do this through the Chamber of Commerce.
Bike Week Task Force has not been commissioned to do anything with respect to
Oh,
this.
they
They're
work
commissioned
for
to implement these guidelines. And this was adopted as a contiguous definition about 15, maybe 18 years ago for specific purposes to be able to operate across alleyways and across the Main Street.
Okay, but was that approved by the city commission?
Yes, it was.
Okay.
All the
Back in,
guidelines were.
and also and this and I could list you a dozen other mistakes that the city commission 15 years ago made.
I think that contiguous should be what the dictionary says is contiguous. And it's not a subjective definition, it's objective. Contiguous is contiguous. Contiguous means side by side, adjacent.
Exactly.
That's my opinion on it.
So my personal opinion is that I disagree with doing all of it right now. There's multiple other methods for these changes to occur. Doesn't appear that we have a lot of agreement. It seems like we have a lot of discussion and a lot of ideas, but we don't have data to make this decision. And I think it would be short-sighted for us to make decisions on this.
Mr. Chairman,
I agree.
As the chairman, there's a motion on the floor and there's a second. I call the question and like a roll call vote.
Okay, Ms. Groom, roll call vote, please.
Wait, what are we?
A no vote means
The motion on the, so let me explain it. So the motion on the floor is to accept and recommend to the city commission Section 1 as defined in the Mr. Webster, the prior chairman, suggested revisions to master plan guidelines.
Which is the first bullet point only, not the entire document.
Correct.
Which states that contiguous is side by side adjacent property, correct?
And 100% ownership, yes.
And 100% ownership, those two factors. Okay, stipulations, okay.
It doesn't actually state that. It just says it should delete the language which
Delete
allows
the
parcels to be
Right.
contiguous when they're separated.
Okay.
Right? So it states what exactly it states. So that's what we're voting on. So Mr. Papalaskis made a motion. It was seconded. So we had discussion, and now please will you call a roll for a vote?
Mr. Hurt?
No.
Ms. Stone?
No.
Mr. Dino P. Pascalakis?
Yes.
Mr. Mayara?
No.
Ms. Ramsey?
Yes.
Mr. Lee?
No.
Ms. Register?
No.
Mr. Dino M. Pascalakis?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
No.
There are 6 noes. Motion fails.
Okay. On the second item, limiting the size of the tent or temporary roof covered area, I'd like to break it down into 2 parts because I did hear reservations over the reduction of 50% over 3 years. So I'd like to start off with I'd like to take the tents and start with Part A. I'd like to move for approval of limiting the size of the tent or other temporary roof coverage on any contiguous parcels to a maximum of 100% of the interior covered roof area of the parcel, period.
Okay. So there's a motion on the floor to limit the size of the tent or other temporary roof coverage on any contiguous parcels to a maximum of 100% of the interior covered roof area of parcel. Is there a second?
Just one quick question. So if it's a 2-story building, you're still counting just the roof, right?
Of a 2-story building, we would take the square footage. So yes, you
Okay.
would add the first floor square footage with the second floor square footage, and that is the total square foot area.
Okay.
I don't think it spells that out.
I think one other comment I'd like to make is that this is where it gets sticky. We're referring to contiguous parcels, which does not refer to Section 1 because that was voted down. So when we say contiguous parcels, we're
Well,
referring
no, now contiguous parcels is defined as even separated by a public right-of-way.
Right, as it exists. I just wanted to make that
Yes,
point.
so I move for approval of Part A with the original definition of contiguous.
Right. So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I second.
All right. Any other discussion?
Again, I don't know what is the, if I don't know. I think if we think that imposing this will cause buildings to go up, I think it's going to take more than that. I disagree. And to me, a tent on one's property is the prerogative of the owner-operator.
I agree, and I'll just restate it. I think breaking this thing up line item by line item is not the way to go here. I think that we're going to end up with something that's possibly not what Mr. Webster intended it to be in its whole, and something that may not even make sense when we push it forward.
Well,
But there is a motion and there is a second.
And I disagree with the way you think. I think Mr. Webster understands that he wasn't going to get 100% approval of each item, and that is why he set it up as bullet points. And so that's why I'm bringing it up one at a time.
Okay, fair enough. Any additional discussion? Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Hart?
No.
Ms. Stone?
No.
Mr. Dino P. Pasqualakis?
Yes.
Mr. Mayara?
No.
Ms. Ramsey?
No.
Ms. Register?
No.
Mr. Dino M. Pasqualakis?
No.
Mr. Phillips?
No.
Mr. Lee?
No.
I don't want to waste this board's time. It's obvious that I'm going to be, even if I go one at a time on every item. Let me jump to the biggest one, and this is one that you guys have a duty as a member of the Main Street Redevelopment Board to not encourage buildings to be demolished for any reason whatsoever. The whole purpose behind this board was to increase the tax base of this redevelopment area and to put in a law that allows for somebody to demolish a building and benefit from it. I think is ludicrous. So I'm going to jump all the way because I hear. Obviously, I can see the votes. But on this item, I will be embarrassed for anybody who votes no to, but it's demolished buildings. No parcel which has a building demolished, and this man took the time to put it legally the way that when we discussed it last month, we weren't able to come up with the language that's written here today. The language that's written here today is because Mr. Webster took his time as an attorney to write it up. And the way he wrote it up took into consideration the discussion that we had last month. No parcel which has a building demolished after this date shall be permitted to have any tent or temporary roof covering over or upon the area in which the building was demolished unless, and this is taking Teresa's comments into consideration, unless a building of comparable size is constructed on such parcel. The effective date would be as soon as the City Commission, if they decide to pass it, but it would be a recommendation from this board. I move for approval.
I second.
All right, any discussion?
Yeah. With all due respect to Mr. Webster, I know he put in a lot of work into this, but it wouldn't be fair to property owners that are struggling as hard as they're struggling on Main Street, that their building is going to be condemned, or building is going to go down, and it's going to be sitting there until they come up with something. And Dino, I respect you a lot. It's not a problem, but we're putting business owners in Main Street. Beach Photo was there for many years. We're putting business people on Main Street in the corner. Don't you think they've been in the corner already long enough? I mean, I understand that buildings should go up on Main Street, and I agree with a lot of things Mr. Webster said, and I know he put in a lot of...
Excuse me, you agreed with nothing that Mr. Webster said. Give me one thing that you agreed with.
Well, Dino, first of all, let me tell you something. I agree with his about the decibels, and I needed somebody's opinion that was dealing with the bottles, somebody that was dealing with the noise. I don't deal with it on a daily basis. None of us deal. The police department deals with it. That's why I wanted to hear their opinion. Okay. So number one, number two, to tell the business owners that are on Main Street. I'm not on Main Street. A lot of us are not on Main Street. To tell them that if the building goes down, it has to stay like this. You can't put nothing there. Let me just finish, please, Dino, please. Until a new building comes up, until they put up a building. They can't put a vendor. They can't put nothing in there until a building comes up. Right?
Okay. Let me address your point. If Randall decided to tear down his building on International Speedway Boulevard, he would not be able to come back and put a tent up there and sell anything on there because he doesn't have, Main Street has the ability to have outside sales under a tent that nobody else in the entire city is allowed.
I apologize, Dino, but you're wrong. Midtown passed it last year. They passed it to have vendors outside.
Okay, Midtown.
And hold on, let me just.
I'm talking about A1A
I understand,
and
but
International
if you-
Speedway Boulevard.
Not a problem. If you give me a chance to explain it. Midtown came out and says they want to put vendors over there. They never had vendors. They put it out. There's no reason why A1A or Speedway Boulevard could not go and put application to get it too. So if Randall wants to get it done, there's ways for him to go. Yes. Listen, Midtown did not have it, Dino. You agree? They didn't have vendors, and they went out and lobbied for it, and they did what they need to do, and they have. My point about this, Dino, and listen, you and I, we agree on a lot of stuff. We disagree on a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I want the board to know we actually get along in real life. Okay. All right.
We do. We know it very well. But my point about, and again, for Main Street and about this, I think Main Street people are the ones that are suffering the most. They might get a freebie or an apple during during Bike Week or during Biketoberfest, but the rest of the year they are suffering. So for us to sit here and to put more rope on there and choke them till, I personally, this is my opinion. Again, I have an opinion. I'm going to say it. I don't think it's fair. If there's certain things aren't here that this board wants to put out, there's other ways. Instead of going one by one, there is other ways. There's certain ways. I think the code enforcement are been trying their best, and believe me, they've been trying their best to enforce certain things. And then again, you came up and said, I don't agree with Webster. I do agree with a lot of him, and believe me, I have a lot of respect for Dan because he put in a lot of time, and he lives right there. Believe me, I feel for him. But at the same time, it's not fair to put business people. You're a business person. I'm a business person. We've been going through a rough time. And we're on a different side of the town. They're on Main Street. So to put them in a situation where choking them anymore, I don't think it's fair.
I think itinerant vending ruined Main Street, okay? I think that you would have seen a lot more development in Main Street. If you want to change Main Street around and make it family friendly.
Maybe there could be a compromise here. I'm thinking of something here. And I agree partially with demolished buildings, not because of itinerant vending. I'm sick of seeing dirt lots. Right. It doesn't have anything in my mind to do with itinerant vending. I could care less what somebody puts up on a lot. I personally am tired of driving down the area where I grew up and seeing desolation. Main Street is our main moneymaker for almost all the events for Beachside now. It's all pushed over to Main Street. Look, drive up and down A1A, drive up in International. It's all empty lots. We have to do something about people demolishing buildings and popping out there for sale, and they're just sitting empty. I think we need to come up with an incentive. I agree. Yeah, itinerary vending is killing the other people that have been here for 30 years, and it's a shame that it's happening this way, but there has to be some sort of compromise. You can't tell a property owner that they can't do that on their property.
Well, no, I'm not.
Well,
we're not telling them they can't tear down their building.
No, but you're telling them that they can't have something.
Randy, what we're talking about is a super special exception that's only allowed in the Main Street and now Midtown for very brief periods of the year.
Right.
That you're not allowed to have, and the rest of the town's not allowed to have. So, if you're not allowed to have it, why should Main Street get it? Okay? Now, I love the vendors, okay? I'm not trying to get rid of them. I've never have. But what you have is you have the situation where it's bricks or it's tents. Just very briefly on the code enforcement, the captain says they don't get that many complaints during Bike Week. And, it's not, they don't get as many as they used to. And you heard John say, well, that's because the code enforcement doesn't do anything. Okay? And that's exactly the problem. Those of us that live there have just flat given up. Okay? That's why so many of your residents want to leave. They don't want to live there. Okay? Because you can't call the police department and actually get a noise complaint violation prosecuted. Okay? Ask code enforcement when the last time was they really did a noise complaint violation and took it to a hearing. Okay? Doesn't happen. All right? We residents have just damn near given up because the police can't do anything, because code won't do anything. Okay? So therefore, we don't even call anymore. Why? Why should I get up out of bed at 1 a.m. again, walk down to Main Street, find out what damn band is making all the noise at what location, try and call it in, and have absolutely nothing come of it? Okay? That's what's going on. You want to be in the neighborhood, you want to see what's going on, and why they don't get noise complaints? Because why? When was one ever prosecuted? Okay? Maybe if you nail them down, they'll after. And believe me, I've gotten in major disagreements with sergeants, lieutenants, okay, and the street officer with copies of the noise ordinance and decibel meters, trying to get them to get that place under control, okay? And usually it takes a call all the way up the chain of command, and it's been to the chief to get reaction sometimes and get them to turn down the volume at 1 a.m. or 2 a.m., all right? That's what we're living with, and code enforcement is virtually useless in that regard. So don't think that they're going to be the savior, okay? And there's only a few out there that are the real problems. If you don't get Main Street under control, it's never going to get any better. We've been on this slide for 20 years because it was 20 years ago they started to allow the tents there, okay? When they kicked them out by ISB and said no more and started allowing them on Main Street. And you watch what's happened on Main Street for the last 20 years. If you want it to keep going that way, do nothing. If you want to get it reversed and get it actually redeveloped and get it turned into a Del Rey or somewhere else where we actually have a vibrant downtown 365 days of the year, then you got to take some action. If not, just keep doing and let them keep doing what they've been doing for 20 years, and I think you'll see it never improve.
All right. Thank you, Mr.
Dino, I
Wilson.
appreciate your efforts, and I just wish you all good luck on it. I'm just saying, it's not code, and there only is one way. It may not be the best solutions, okay? But something's got to happen out there.
Okay. And first, let me say I appreciate the 4 years that you've been here, and
Yeah.
and obviously, all the time that you put into everything here.
And Mr. Webster, I respect you a lot. I give you a lot of credit, but you said something that I'm gonna pick on. You said there's only few that are bad apples on Main Street. Right? Is it? Then we have to punish everybody?
How is it punching somebody to tell somebody that they can't knock down their building and put a tent
So
up?
if two are not doing by law, if they're not doing by law, and first of all, code enforcement is under the police department right now, and I know they're very, and maybe not on Main Street. I cannot say anything on that, but because of certain issues with, I think it's only a couple on Main Street, right? It's only certain one.
What my proposals
Yes,
here
sir.
will not affect 95% of Main Street, okay? It really is only attempting to deal with those that I think are the bad actors, okay? I've walked it many times, okay? I've photographed it. I've brought the photos in here and shown them, and shown the problems with the good examples of how you set up for a band and the bad examples of how you set up for a band. Of those that use their speakers and set their compression properly to control it to their site, and those that come in the big ones and set up these monster stages, and they just play it as loud as they can play it, okay? And they really don't give a damn. And, Bike Week, we just don't even try to call in anymore, okay? But when it's not Bike Week and we try and call in when Main Street Station is just ripping away over there or something, it's useless. I can't tell you how many calls I've made, and not one has ever been prosecuted. I've had pictures of the noise meter. I've got all this, but they don't do anything. And you can't expect code. The police can ask them, but sometimes, believe me, after major issues with the police too at times, to get them to implement it. And sometimes I've written letters to the city manager complaining about the problems, and then the chief gets involved. They say, oh, we're going to fix this. No problem. We're going to take care of this. We're going to be strict from now on. A few months later, it's same old, same old.
Thank you, Mr. Webster.
Thank you.
I have a comment.
Okay.
I think the very fact of what I'm listening to this conversation, we were on the last item,
Correct.
which has to do with if you tear a building down, you cannot put a tent on it and you cannot put it into a parking lot. Am I correct about that?
No.
During Bike Week.
No.
You cannot have a tent during Bike Week.
Okay, what it says is that if you tear a building down and do not build a building of a comparable size, you could still tear a building down and put parking, but you can't use that parking during Bike Week and Biketoberfest as for itinerant vending purposes. So you could still tear a building down and add parking, but you won't be able to get away with the exception that only Main Street and Midtown has over the rest of the world.
Okay. I happen to agree with you that this, of all the things that are on this list, that is vitally important. This is the most important thing on this list, and it has nothing to do with the amount of noise and bottles and the definition of well, it has to do with the definition of contiguous. Those two are tied together, but they are such an important major issue to me of what becomes of Main Street and what it turns and what it can become and horribly not become. That the very fact of what the discussion I'm hearing is they shouldn't be tied together in this discussion. And this is so important that I think we should isolate it. I think we should move it to a further discussion, but I think we should take it away from all the other things of the recommendations of the special events during Bike Week.
Oh, I agree. That's why I jumped to this. I skipped everything else. I said, if at a minimum, please pass this, is what I'm saying.
And we can't tonight, Dino. It would be a bad idea to try to pass it tonight. It's so too important.
So I just have one final comment here, and I agree with Mr. Mayer. My concern is that somebody demolishes a building. Maybe Bike Week and itinerant vending is the only way that they're ever going to come up with the funds to put another building on that site again. And if we say that, hey, you can't do that either, then what do you do?
If you push this economically to the nth degree, to the point it could push to, people would tear their buildings down just to put tents up, just to make their money on, and we would have a Main Street of parking lots. And that's what I don't want to see.
Mm-hmm. What about if somebody has a contract on a piece of property and it's tear down, he's got to tear it down because it's condemned, and the contingency is 180 days, 6 months, and he misses Bike Week and Biketoberfest?
My whole point is that, do you really want to see a Main Street with nothing but parking lots on it? Because that could actually happen by definition of this law.
Okay.
Well, let me. I just like to ask, under this proposal, it would be okay to demo a building and conduct parking on it during Bike Week?
Yes.
It would not be okay to demo that building, but instead have itinerant vendors on that property during
Correct.
Bike Week. Okay. Even though to do itinerant vending during the event, there's several prerequisites that have to be in place before a property can be used for such uses.
And the prerequisites are what? That they put brick paver or?
Again, if I had it right here, I'd read them off to you.
No.
But it does include pavers.
No, but
it's fenced, it's landscaping.
You just recently did it. You put brick pavers down. You put fencing around the area, and what? I mean, we're not talking about. I mean, aesthetically, and I can't really talk about yours because I supported what you did. But there's
and I appreciate that.
Yeah, but there's properties on Main Street that actually were demolished, and you see tents that are selling T-shirts right next to them. And one example was Hot Leathers. Another example was Tombstones. You know,
well, I'm just trying to clarify your position, but I want it to be clear that there's different thresholds that have to be met. As I understand, I don't know what you need for parking.
But I guarantee you,
it's not,
but Teresa, I guarantee you, by the time this board makes up its mind, if they don't make up their mind tonight, by the time we make up our minds, what's going to end up happening is you're going to see another building come down, and then I'm going to say, I told you so.
Okay.
I guarantee you that. And trust me, I'm going to bring a recording of this meeting. At that meeting, I'm going to say, I told you so, and this is how you voted.
Well, I guess all I want to say is that my business has benefited significantly since I put in the parking lot beside it.
Your building that you demolished was incidental. It was a storage little hut. It was a 5 by 20. I mean 10 by 20. What was it?
It was two stores. They were both 50 feet deep. One was 13 feet wide. The other was
But it was
about
directly
28 feet
adjacent
wide.
to the street, and actually it also helped on the noise ordinance part, because I think that what we discussed was that when you do have a band, it actually ricocheted off the building going back into the neighborhood, and when you opened it up, it actually went towards Main Street.
So what you're saying is you're finding there were incidental circumstances that made that acceptable. But what you're saying going forward is there would be no extenuating circumstances that could enable a building.
No, I'm not, because what I'm saying in this instance, we're allowing a situation where if you demolish a building and then you come up with a plan to build another building, that you will be allowed to still benefit from this bogus rule that we allowed all of Main Street to benefit from.
So we have a motion and a second, and we've had lots of discussion. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Hurt?
No.
Ms. Stone?
No.
Mr. Dino P. Pasqualakis?
Yes.
Mr. Mayara?
No.
Ms. Ramsey?
Yes.
Ms. Register? No. Mr. Dino M. Pasqualakis?
No.
Mr. Phillips?
It's a hard one. I don't like seeing buildings knocked down. I really hate to see this transpire in this direction, but we do need to do something about buildings being torn down, and I believe Dino's right. On the other hand, I don't think we have the right to tell someone that owns that property what they can or cannot do with vending or not. I'm going to vote yes.
Chairman Lee?
No. Motion fails. We have two more discussion items to go through tonight. The next one is drive-through facilities.
On drive-through facilities, I leave it to the board if you want to have a discussion. There's no additional information provided by staff.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I don't want to be the one talking all the time. Okay, somebody else talk. I think this is one that we're going to agree on, you know? Okay,
I don't have a problem.
okay. We brought it up from previous meetings, and I don't see and I actually used my cousin's piece of property to use as an example. The Shell's restaurant is an undeveloped piece, is a property that's closed right now on A1A. I've said it in the past. You know, drive-through restaurants might be something that would cause an investor to say, hey, I want to come in here and open it up. Maybe McDonald's is looking to relocate or what have you. That's a potential site. I don't like seeing closed down buildings. I don't agree with the consultant on the E-zone saying that we shouldn't have drive-throughs in this area. I like, and I believe the zoning that we're talking about is T2 zoning. What is the zoning for the A1A properties?
There's several.
I know between ISB and Main Street.
Between
is
ISB,
T3 or
when you're talking about the property that is on A1A.
On A1A,
right?
I meant to say A1A. I mean between A1A between. Yeah, I'm done with Main Street. Okay. Okay. Property on A1A between International Speedway Boulevard and Main Street is on the west side is.
RDB 5.
RDB 5.
Yes,
Okay.
most of it.
Okay.
Not all of it.
And then across the street on the east side of Main Street would be RDB 6?
Or no, RDB 5 for most of it.
Oh, for both the east and the west side?
Yes.
Okay.
Specialty retail.
And what
district.
about, let's say, if you were to go if you were to go to the corner of A1A and Earl Street, would that and going south? I mean, going north from there.
You're testing me. I think this is an RDB 5 up in that area, and
then-
so the majority of A1A in the Main Street area is RDB 5.
Okay, then how about we do this? I move for us to approve drive-throughs in the RDB 5 zoning district, but put constraints, because I know the consultants have problems with the drive-throughs, and then it opens up for discussion. Okay, and you could, and if I make a motion, you could turn around and if you decide to second it, you could second it. If somebody else, if it's motion is second, then somebody else could say, I would like to add this to it. They could do that, and then we could vote on that item as a motion in a second. But anyways, I'd like to move for approval of drive-throughs in the RDB 5 zoning district. And to require more screening devices for the headlights of the cars in the event that's because the consultant said there's two items that bothered them about drive-throughs. One was the noise after midnight, so I'd like the intercom to be turned off after midnight being one of the conditions. And the second thing was the headlights of the cars might interfere with some of the neighboring properties, so I want to make sure that the screening device would keep the headlights of any automobiles from being able to interfere with the properties to the west of the subject properties. So those are the two conditions to allow for drive-throughs within the RDB 5 zoning district. That's my motion.
I'd like to add something to that. Again, brought up to attention from other business owners on A1A specifically that I know, and especially the residents that live in between the areas where basically Grandview, Lenox, in particular, the people I know, they're not very keen when I got to talk to them about drive-throughs in particular, the way they look. And if you look down, and specifically downtown DeLand, and what Port Orange does is that they put higher restrictions on what they can or cannot do visually to said properties. And maybe we could ease a lot of the residents in the beachside area that are very concerned about having a drive-through and another drive-through and another drive-through, put higher restrictions on. I know DeLand does like a historic feel. Like there's like a Checkers there that you drive right by it. You don't even know if it's a Checkers because it looks like a historic building and the marquee's that big on the side of the road. Maybe we can add something into that.
I amend my motion to add, can you put it in one sentence?
Legalese.
Is it fair for you to ask him to put it in one sentence?
Okay. Okay. I know, that's fine. I mean, or if you, I amend my motion to allow for.
I'm down. I'm completely 100% agreeing with having drive-through restaurants. I think that we should have it, but I think that we should, to put it into words, just help me out, somebody.
What you're trying to do is saying, how about leave it to staff to come up with the wordage, but.
I think it would be maybe the redevelopment board should be the ones to agree, just like what the Hard Rock, when they come through, they are asking us what they want, what visually appeals.
Okay, so how about we do this? I'm going to amend my motion to make drive-throughs in the RDB 5 zoning district a conditional use, subject to meeting conditions that staff thinks are would be acceptable for using downtown DeLand and others as an example. Then what you're going then what would end up happening is that if somebody wants to put a drive-through, they would bring it back before this board for approval on a case-by-case basis. Go ahead. Yeah, you're raising your hand?
Yeah. Well, I think you're getting to some design standards. Is that what you're...
Yeah. I've been talking to a lot of residents, especially in my area, international. They've come up and talked to me. And I get specifically one of the residents that was here that was very irate about having a drive-through even allowed on A1A. I think it's just the appeal. They don't like the idea of having gigantic marquees. And I told them, I was like, well, there's already standards into that. But just to bring it up, I think that maybe we should, like a design aspect.
So, and Dino's motion is to make this a conditional use, but the conditions need to be...
spelled out.
Right. So that would take some work.
Okay,
And
so
I
how
don't-
about this?
Trying to figure out what
how
those.
about I withdraw my motion, okay, and ask staff to bring a set of guidelines and make this not a discussion item, but make this an item on the agenda for next month. Okay, I'm going to withdraw my motion, which means the person that seconded me would have to withdraw their motion. And then I'd like to direct staff to bring this as a discussion item so that way it addresses some of Randall's thoughts but it's not, not a discussion. I bring it as an item on the agenda next month so we could actually see some kind of writing that makes everybody here feel. And what I'd encourage is some of the board members to speak to staff right now and tell them what you would like to be part of the conditions. So that way, when it comes before us next month, we could give a thumbs up.
I have a question. There's not going to be every property is not going to have a drive-through. There's not going to be like 50,000 drive-throughs. Not all properties.
Right.
All I'm saying is not all properties in DB5 are feasible for a drive-through.
I understand.
Okay, so let's make that clear.
So can just one housekeeping thing. So the motion was withdrawn. It was never seconded. So therefore.
Therefore, it's gone.
Thank you.
So what I'm trying to say is not every property, and I understand that there's some concern of the residents, but it's not a lot of properties in that zone where a lot of drive-through can go, because there is a very hard requirement for drive-through. Very. It used to be until everything gone off, and now I think city came up, and believe me, I saw some of the requirement, and I think it's harder with the requirement for a drive-through than anything else. So not all properties are feasible for a drive-through.
And I agree with that.
You see what I'm saying? So
I 100% agree with that.
And I also think that if you're on the east side of A1A, the standard should be less than if you're on the west side of A1A, you know? But that's why it's probably best that we take a month break. But this time I want staff to make recommendations, okay? I mean, instead of having us here scrambling to try to find the words, come up with something that you guys feel comfortable with.
I'll tell you what, and I said it last time, I'll say it again. From the last meeting, is from the staff standpoint, my opinion is I don't think it's a good idea. And you heard the smaller lots. This is an urban area. This is a more pedestrian intensive area. I still think it's not a practical thing. We have one example with the Starbucks because it was already there. They're going through a PD process. Someone else that really just has to have something like that could do the same thing and come through that process right now and open it up. But I don't think we're really going to do a lot to solve what some of the other real issues are with trying to redevelop these corridors, which are very small lots.
Yeah, but there's some buildings that are vacant that could benefit from having. I mean, just so you understand, Starbucks would not have looked at that Wendy's if that drive-through was not there.
I disagree with you. I disagree. Dino, I disagree, but I just want to say one thing. We're the only beach that we lost 16 fast food places, and we lost 16 drive-throughs.
Right.
Okay? Let's just make that clear.
I would agree with that.
Okay, we're the only beach. I believe me, I did a lot of research. Daytona Beach, the only one that lost 16 fast food places, and in a small area. So if we limit no drive-through, no nothing, do we want again to kill people like Starbucks to come in? Believe me, they would have looked at the property without. There was other places on the table beside that, but the drive-through is a cherry on the cake for them because the new concept is a self-sustained building with the drive-through. That's they're saying that 22% of their business is going to come from drive-through.
But there are some businesses that will not. So there are some fast food places that obviously will not come here if they're not given the ability to have drive-throughs.
I say it very loud. I agree with you.
Oh my God!
I agree with you, Dino. Dino, let me tell you something, Dino. Let me tell you something. I listen. I can give you a list of all the fast food places that we lost, and there were some next to you, in front of you. There's some next to me. There's some next to a lot of people.
And I want the board to understand one thing. This comes I mean, as a business person that probably has the only fast food in that area, I'm actually hurting myself by bringing this up. Okay, you know, I mean, and that's a fact. Okay, I mean, go with the exception of where else are you going to find a hamburger? You know.
And you know what? Give it choice to Burger King right now to pick a bigger drive-through. They'll jump on it. Yeah. And you see how tough it is for
So I just want you guys to know, I'm just doing what I think is right. There's no business motive for me right here. I mean, if anything is against my business judgment.
We're all here to vote on what we believe.
Right.
And we're all in business, different businesses, and we all believe. So as far as the drive-through, I think that there's not a lot of properties on A1A from DB5 that are feasible for a drive-through, number one. Number two, I don't think that the small properties, anybody's going to come in the small properties want to do a drive-through. Okay. They can't, because there's certainly a requirement from the city. It's not us. It's the city requires a certain rating, a certain distance, a certain drive, a certain thing on that. And they're very, very tough. I'm sure you saw them. They're very, very tough about that.
Well, can we do this? Because obviously staff is against drive-through. I see Randall's in favor of drive-through. I see Gilbert, you're in favor of drive-through. And I feel funny calling you Gilbert because I have about it. But anyway, that won't go there. Can we get a consensus of the board just as not committing yourselves, but so that we could give direction to staff to say, hey, we don't care that you're against drive-through. We want you to come up with some writing, okay?
Dino, I want to say something. I'm sorry to speak up because I'm involved a lot in what's going on. I try to get involved as much as possible because of my business, but I don't think staff is 100% against drive-through.
No,
Am I saying that right, Mr. Reed?
I think if land's assembled and there's and it's a different situation and look, let me take a shot at this and kind of bring you back some information about the drive-through. I mean,
but as an item on the agenda, not as a discussion item. I mean, we discuss things every month, over and over, and we keep discussing the same thing every month. I mean, let's at least vote.
I think what I hear Reed saying is that we may not have all the information we need to be able to vote for it next month. But how would you feel if we gave them 1 month to give us the information that they think we need, and then the following month it's on the agenda?
Fine.
Okay.
I'm okay with that.
Good with that?
Okay, I'll take whatever I can get tonight.
Educate us, Reed.
I'm going to. Thank you.
Okay, does that sound good for you, Reed?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So,
oh my God, I'm up again.
So Dino, fees in lieu of parking.
I have a question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Reed, I noticed that there are no, I don't think there are any fast food drive-throughs in Daytona Beach Shores. Do you know why that is?
There's Burger King.
Yeah, Burger King.
That's way south, isn't it?
But it's in
That's
the shores.
Daytona Beach Shores.
But way south in Shores.
But the beginning of the
Before
shores.
Dunlawton.
Well, I guess my question is theoretically or hypothetically, why are there not a lot of drive-throughs from Dunlawton all the way to Granada?
I don't know because I'd have to look at the code and.
I can give you my opinion.
Yeah, there you go.
Not busy enough.
Thank you. Thank you.
Not busy enough.
Yes.
When Burger King closed down two of their Burger Kings, the ones they kept were the only ones that they actually owned the property, where they got rid of the ones where they were leasing because they were not making enough money.
So really, we probably don't need to worry about a lot of drive-thrus wanting to be in our Main Street, South Atlantic area.
A lot of it has to do, if you can make money, they're going to come. If they're not making money, they're not going to come.
Yeah.
And if they were here, that's why most of them left, because
Yeah.
we used to have a Burger King lease for 25 years. They bought out the last 10 years because they were not making any money.
So that's what I'm saying. I think, Dino, I think it's not
agree,
something we're going to have a big
I
problem
agree
with. Do you?
Dino.
A lot of it is,
I'm with you 100%.
the Burger Kings, the McDonald's, the Wendy's, the Checkers, all of them, they're going to come if they can make money.
Now
Daytona's market's not busy enough year-round. If they're going to spend $2 million building a Burger King, or it might even be more now, they'd rather go someplace where they know they're going to be guaranteed 10 to 12 months of business and not, let's be super busy for 5 months and then lose for 6 months.
Yeah.
Because they have to hire their manager. They got to pay him every single week. Yeah. And it's just the cash flow. So they'd rather take their money and go somewhere else where they're going to guaranteed to make it.
And to elaborate on what he said, we used to have one of the highest gross McDonald's in the United States on Main Street. And this shut down because the rest of the year was not
On
working.
Main Street?
On A1.
No, on A1A.
On
But in
A1A.
that case,
McDonald's.
but in that particular case, and not to talk about, but in that particular case, that McDonald's sold because they were conned into believing into this new boardwalk. They were given the right of first refusal by GDA Investment and
Yes.
Carlsberg Management.
Yeah.
I have the document.
I
In fact,
agree with you,
even
Dino.
have
I
it
agree,
here.
but they were not making the money the rest of the year. Bottom line.
When they sold, they did it with the option to purchase in the new development.
But with the idea they were not making money. The only reason the McDonald's in Ormond is
That's
there.
why they wanted to come back into the same
Okay,
area.
so just, we're going to have staff come back with some suggestions.
I got
with
the document.
and the data that you think staff needs us to see, Reed, just to help us be more educated.
Right. Just
And
and
then-
again, includes the issue of market demand. I think that those are all good points.
Okay, and then, so we'll get that additional information in March. Can have a discussion about it with the intent that in April it's on the agenda.
Yes.
If
If
that
you
it's
want
on the
to.
agenda, yeah,
Mhm.
if the board wants it on there. Okay, so, Dino, fees in lieu of parking.
Okay, I don't work for the city of Daytona Beach. I don't know why I'm bringing all these items to the. But anyways, but this was an idea that I researched, and I researched us really because of the bungee ejection seat tower that was supposed to be was contemplating being built south of Main Street. And here is a situation where they will require 30 parking spaces, and I thought that we need to have an avenue out there if somebody is required to have parking and they're not going to, and I'm talking about this for the benefit of the new board members, because the old board members, not that you're old, Kerry, I'm so sorry. But the people that have been on this board have heard me talk about it before. There should be an avenue out there that if somebody wants to do a development and they don't have adequate parking, and they're required, just like this bungee, to have 30 parking spaces, that we have a dollar amount that they could pay that goes into a fund that could build a parking garage for that benefits the whole area. It would be a one-time charge. I talked to Paul McKittrick about this idea. He says that the average cost per parking space in a public parking garage comes out to be $10,000 per space. So to use the bungee ejection seat ride as an example, they would require 30 parking spaces, actually 32. 32 times 10,000, that would have been required to put $320,000 in the fund. And that by itself would help be a big chunk of change to where maybe a parking garage could one day be built in the Main Street redevelopment area without it losing money if enough of these projects happen. But that's an idea that actually this time the staff will say that they support that idea because it's part of our master plan.
I'm going to tell you I support it, but here's the thing. Here's the thing, Dino. I think it was 2 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. Mr. Berger can correct me, where this board had an item in front of them, and they voted that you don't have to have that much parking for the customers you have from a certain area. Am I right, Mr. Berger?
Well, that was related to all that RDB5 we talked about on A1A.
Yes, thank you, sir. So,
But what I'm saying is that if there's required parking, I'm not talking about if there's required parking and you don't have the ability to come out, we give the person an avenue to where he could actually pay instead of having to buy the property next door in order to satisfy that parking requirement. It is part of our master plan, is it not?
It is, and in the E-zone master plan, we talk about that as a part of something we should consider in the future. And
Okay, so the future should eventually become today.
Eventually, and I think one of the things that I think is, from a policy standpoint, and this goes back to how we do things, is whether or not there's a facility first that you're paying into as opposed to paying into something that isn't there. It's always a tough decision for a body to come to the decision that, well, we're going to impose something on you for the parking, much as it right up front makes sense, is that you're going to also be saying, but we don't know where or when or how that facility.
Except for you know where, you just don't know when. The city of Daytona Beach has the lot that used to be the parking lot. Well, right now, currently, the Hilton is using that parking lot right next to the Peabody Auditorium. When the city of Daytona Beach lost a $3 million mortgage for the original for the original Marriott Hotel, we ended up retaining an option to be able to build a high-rise parking garage as long as we guarantee those amount of parking spaces to whatever hotel exists there, which currently is the Hilton. So that is the location where it would not cost any additional money to purchase land for the city of Daytona. They would just have to build the actual building. Is that not correct?
But we're only talking about a master plan of some ideas about where it may or may not happen. Other things can transpire over time, and I'm just saying that we're speculating, and most people don't want to pay into a system where it's about speculation and not about facts.
I know, but if you turn around and you have some kind of dollar amount that if we reached the goal of $1 million, let's say, then we will proceed with, attempting to get matching funds from so and so and so and so, and then start, like maybe we could have a dollar amount set up to where if we reach that amount, then we could go to step 2.
If I was asked what would I do first, and I would go back and I would say, I'm going to go out and attract a development with a parking garage that has, or I'm going to bond a parking garage. I'm going to do something to build a facility and have a system in place that we talk about how we all pay for that. And that may be this in lieu of parking. That's how you accomplish that.
So,
at this time, and when we start to redevelop Main Street, I think to do it ahead of that, and not have that first project out of the ground. My opinion right now is I don't think that this is the time to do it. I think what I do think is important, and what you're suggesting is that we need to start thinking about that. We need to start having a better idea of what that policy is. But until a project happens, I don't think we're going to get much traction.
I'll be honest with you. If this board does not want to consider fees, I don't want to see it again next month. I mean, if you want to consider it, then let's talk about it. If you don't want to consider it, I'm sick of seeing the same items come back before us month after month, and we just keep talking about it, and then I keep saying the same thing, and then it comes back the next month.
Let me understand something, Dino. What you're saying is, if somebody wants to open a business and they don't have parking, right?
Adequate parking. Then maybe they have enough for 15 spaces,
but they need
the
more.
rule is 15.
Okay,
20.
what about, let's say you took your cousin's spots, and that's not in the E-zone. Let's say part of the E-zone.
It is in the E-zone.
No, it's not. E-zone is Harvey and down. Harvey North. E-zone is Harvey North.
Okay. Oh, you're right. I'm sorry.
It's not. Let's say somebody wants to put it in the E-zone. The parking you're talking about is behind the corner.
Yeah, but this has nothing to do with the E-zone. This is part of the master plan for the redevelopment area.
Then
But
okay, let's say somebody wants to put a business next to his property and they don't have enough parking for that size of business. You telling me that you want to make them pay for parking that's 5 blocks down? Is that what my understanding is?
Yes. Okay. And and for that particular businessman, maybe he thinks that 20 spaces are adequate for his purposes, and he doesn't have the ability to purchase more. So instead of him coming before the variance board and asking for a variance and getting away with knocking out 5 spaces, we put in a way for him to be able to satisfy his need and help the general area, which would, even though it's not going to directly benefit him,
so what you're saying is
it benefits the whole area.
Let's take Randall, and then basically he's going to pay for something he's never going to use. That's basically what it is. He's going to help the. I agree with the fees. Don't get me wrong, Dino. I agree with the fees. We do need.
You obviously don't.
No, I do, but you have to make sense. The fees come in. You have to make sense. If the guy is by Speedway Boulevard, by across the streamline, and he doesn't have enough parking, you're telling him to pay $10,000.
The idea that I'm brought before this.
I'm just making a point.
Okay, and the idea that I brought before this, it has been done in many redevelopment areas. Is it not, Reed?
Aren't you just talking about properties that are in the CRA? You're not talking about properties outside the CRA, are you?
I'm basically.
That's what I'm
right now.
trying to find out, because you can't ask somebody to pay. Listen, I'm going to give you an example, a perfect example. Listen, you said about the drive-through and all that. There's people that are coming to ask me for my properties that there's not enough parking, but they're way from the places that you're suggesting where the parking garage can go. What is the reasoning coming up to them and says, well, I'll tell you what, you're 5 blocks down. You're going to need to pay $10,000 per spot, 5 blocks
This
down.
can only be for properties that are in the CRA. This cannot be for properties that are outside the CRA. We are a CRA board.
Well, no, I know. I'm not talking about the CRA.
Are you talking, Dino, about properties all throughout the city of Daytona Beach?
We could structure it. No. We could structure however you want. If you guys want to structure this for the E-zone area only, then it's basically from
CRA
Harvey to
only, which is bigger than the E-zone.
What's that?
The CRA, South Atlantic and Main Street.
Well, obviously, we can't require, like, let's say Hard Rock Hotel to pay for a parking garage, obviously, in the Main Street redevelopment area. I know, but what I'm
Then it doesn't make any sense, Dino. You can't have. It doesn't make any sense. In my opinion, it has to only be with the properties that are in the CRA area district. That's it.
No, and it is the CRA, but you can't. But
Only.
that's too broad of an area. You can't turn around and there's two. We have the South Atlantic CRA and we have the Main Street redevelopment. We can't require somebody in South Atlantic to be funding a Main Street thing. I mean, obviously, and I agree with you on that. Okay.
I'm just trying to put the ease. I'm trying to put where.
No, I agree with you with that. It can't encompass the entire CRA. It has to be somewhat. I mean, it could be a few blocks away. It doesn't have to be across the street from him. But and that's something that staff, like I said, this is part of our master plan. Staff has it. They should be bringing it to us. And I'm sure that they have the wordage, but what I'm bringing before this board, it has been done in other redevelopment areas in other cities.
But do they have a limit? Do they have a?
Do you have that, Reed? Now for proposed public parking lots in our area in the CRA, you have that in your master plan, right? Yeah.
We have that recommendation that in the future we will look at the parking.
So you're of the opinion, Reed, and you are of the opinion that it is a good concept. It's a good idea.
It's a good idea. It's just it's a timing issue, and when you approach that, and it's
when staff is ready to bring it before this, bring it before this. I don't want to see this again until you're ready to bring it before you.
So we'll remove that from future agendas, and just when the staff thinks that it's the right time and we've got a good plan, then you'll bring it back to us. Wow. Good?
And by the way, just so you know, after this meeting, we can't talk about this. You know, we're on the board, so basically we could talk about fantasy football, but that's it. You know.
All right. So moving on to redevelopment projects update, item number 8. Reed.
That one is just real brief. I believe the band shell restoration. There's a request to the county on the ECHO grant. And I've lost track of when that's on, but I think it's this month. That there'll be a request before the county council for $350,000 grant to help deal with. We have a roof that needs to be replaced. It's very expensive.
Reed, when that item comes, can you email the board so that, because I would like to be at the county council when that item comes up.
It's imminent. Does anybody have that date? Yeah, I apologize. I didn't bring that date with me.
You guys, I think I have it on my calendar, but I'm not 100%. 1 second.
Okay. All right. Well, moving on. if I could, the clock tower restoration is something we're doing already, independent of any grants at this time. So there's a new features that are on there that restore it back to what it used to look like. So that's kind of neat. We're also doing a lot of things to just keep it clean, and when you're there, you'll see that that's in a lot better shape than it has been. And to some credit to the gentlemen that have been working on, and there's a not-for-profit works on the clocks and the mechanisms and keeps it going, and they've kind of pushed to try to make sure that we're paying attention to that, and that was helpful. And we're responding, so I think that's all good.
By the way, Reed, the date is February 20th. I just don't have the time.
February 20th.
Yeah, so Thursday, February 20th.
Okay, very good. Thank you. I think it's important that we're all aware of that, and let your feelings be known about getting some money in redevelopment here. The Surfside Historic District was brought up for discussion at the City Commission. I think I let those of you who were on the board last month know that. So I think that's the discussion kind of moved towards trying to create some kind of a design district, talk about design standards without actually going to a local historic district designation. That's where it ended up. Again, I think staff will probably be looking at some different options that might be there to still try to achieve some standards. As you know, we already have some design standards in the neighborhoods in redevelopment already. The question is between what we have and what may be out there that we should be doing in addition to that. That's what we're going to look at. Okay?
Question.
Yes.
I understand that Historic Society wants to have a local designation. The Historic Society wants to have a local designation of Surfside Village as a registration, as a historical landmark or a district, whatever they call it.
So request that was made. They've been talking about it for quite some time now.
Is this tied into what you're talking about?
Yes. They made a request to the commission. It came up for discussion by the City Commission.
And is that historic board, is that one of the city boards?
That's the city board, the Historic Preservation Board.
Okay. And who's the chairman of that board?
The chairman, Matt Romanek.
Okay. All right. And I've been trying to access a map. And Carrie, maybe you can help me with this. I've been trying to access a map of exactly where the Surfside Village, I live in that district, of where the historic village is located. And you can't just say it's Harvey to ISB and Halifax to A1A, because I understand on the streets that go north and south that it actually goes in and out. Like one house may be in it and the next house may not be.
Okay. Why don't you call me and I'll make sure you get them.
Can you get that for me?
Sure.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Okay. And brick pavers, I don't see our...
I think she gave up.
Yeah. Well, so anyway, I'll just let you know we've been looking at. We've been down to the New Smyrna. We don't have anything else to add to that right now, other than we've tried to look at that program down there and what they're doing, and talk to our colleagues down there about it.
Anything else?
That's it.
All right. Are there any public comments?
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Archie Rodani, 2521 North Halifax Avenue, Daytona Beach, Florida, 32118. I've been here 40 years. I can't believe it. I came as a young kid. Today I'm an old man. So I see you guys always talk about parking. I got a super proposal. Since city has a parking lot next to our Corbin building, we could work out some kind of a deal where it'll be almost nothing. And this way they can really put a huge parking garage. I would like to sit with city manager or one of the big ones, whoever, would like to listen to me, and I would come up with a proposal, and I know it'll work and it won't cost nothing. This way, almost the ground is free. They own the next door. We have this one, and we can make it happen, and it will be the best thing ever happened for the city as well as the community.
Mr. Donati, where is this property located? Where's the location?
Corbin Building, 777 Main Street. It's adjoining to the Peabody Auditorium across from the Ocean Center, and next door to the city empty lot property.
All right.
Oh, okay, okay.
It's next door to Peabody, adjoining.
It's Grandview. It's the old.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
God bless you guys.
Thank you.
Same to you.
John Nicholson, 413 North Granby Avenue. Several things. One, when you're renovating the band shell, when they did the ice skating, they put in this god-awful electrical conduit right there in the front. It's terrible. It's nobody in their right mind would ever do it, but of course the city did. But I'm asking, when you renovate, that you take it back out, because it really doesn't belong on an historic building of that nature. Secondly, the clock tower. We did mention it, but one of the local gentlemen that lives on Beachside bought and paid for the eagle that used to be there years ago that we lost in the hurricane. He paid for it out of his pocket and put it back on the clock tower. It really looks very nice. If you look at it, it's really great. Lighting. 9 years ago, I came before the Peabody the board here with regard to lighting on Main Street. It's very dark. When we started the CRA, Suzanne Kewen and the city went through this lighting thing. No LEDs, no chase lighting, no neon. Main Street really looks dead. I'm asking you to look at it again to see what they're allowed to do, because there are a lot of innovations right now that are dynamic for the businesses there, and they should be allowed to do whatever they want to in terms of lighting and in terms of signage. I know the code has been going down, hitting several of them because they have chasers or they have LED lights, and we're not allowed to have them. So they've been hitting these stores who are trying to modernize and look like everybody else, but we're not allowed to do that. So I'm asking you to look at the old lighting codes that we passed 20, 30 years ago and update them. Secondly, I looked into increasing the wattage on the pole lights. For $800 a year, we can go up to the next higher level and increase the lighting from Main Street to Auditorium and just beyond. What happens is a lot of people perceive darkness as threatening. Light is a good thing. So if we could add lighting to it by increasing the voltage, I think people would feel safer, and it would be an enhancement to Main Street, especially the visitors.
You have 1 more minute, John.
Okay.
Thanks.
Parking. Okay, now you would do that. Nobody else but me. Parking, we've done that for years. I'm asking you to go from Hollywood to the river and not require parking. The rest of Main Street is not required parking. You should do the whole Main Street. Renovate Main Street. Teresa just did a project. The pavers don't match. And if you go down Main Street, there are patches and nothing matches. It looks terrible. So I'm asking you to match all of Main Street so the bricks look alike. Also, handicap. The city just did handicap on Peninsula. They did 3 of the 4, and 1 of them they didn't do. So I'm asking you to do from river to ocean so that when people walk, especially during Bike Week and Biketoberfest, that we don't have all the cones sitting there. So instead of people stepping up and down and having the cones and tripping over the cones, just start from one end to the other, put the little bubbles, the little ramps, and then take any pavers that we take out and put them in where we put in the wrong colors and the wrong styles, so that everything matches on Main Street. And landscape. 25 years ago, we did from, which was a different zoning, the ocean to Hollywood, and then we stopped. So Boot Hill Saloon doesn't match the rest of Main Street. So our festivals stop at Peninsula, but all the decorations are not in that one block. So I'm asking you to go from Hollywood to the river. The only real intensive thing that would look like the rest of it, because it widens to 60 feet once you get past Peninsula. So all you need to do is just one city block of lighting and texture. And that can be easily done with just motorcycle parking, because both bars really don't need parking. They need motorcycle parking. And lastly, we need to update. Let's skip that one. Let's also add lanes to that intersection. We can add 5 lanes so that there's nobody stopping and then holding up traffic, which is what problem we have at those 2 intersections. It's wide enough to have 5 lanes. Go right. There's enough land there to do that on those 2 intersections.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Are there any board comments?
I'm going to add one last thing. When we came up, I believe at one of the previous meetings, I mentioned a list of the bands that we did for the that we came up with for the Friends of the Band show. Accidentally, we had missed out on May 31st. We went from May 24th to June 7th. We added the Michael Almond, who's actually Greg Almond's son. He's a national act, but he will be doing an Almond Brothers tribute band on the 31st. So obviously we're going to have Eagles, Jimmy Buffett, a bunch of tribute bands through the whole summer, and it's a pretty good list.
Okay. Any other comments? All right. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.